All right, good afternoon. It seems that the party and the celebration has already started. I'm excited. I feel the electricity and the excitement in the room for this awesome event. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome today to honor and celebrate the 80th anniversary of the Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944. I would like to welcome and pay homage to VBA Undersecretary for Benefits, the Honorable Joshua Jacobs, VA Chief of Staff, Ms. Kimberly Jackson, leaders and members of veteran service organizations, state and county veteran service officers, all my amazing colleagues of the Department of Veterans Affairs, veterans, federal partners, public servants, and other esteemed guests here in the room and, of course, joining us virtually. Thank you for being here as we observe this 80th anniversary for the GI Bill. I'm Pam Johnson. I'm the Chief Management Officer for the VA, the Veterans Benefits Administration, and I work in the Office of the Undersecretary for Benefits. And I'm just excited to be here. It's absolutely my pleasure to serve as your host as we observe the 80th anniversary of the GI Bill. As we commence today's events, if you are able, please rise for the national anthem, graciously sung by Ms. Maureen Elias, Senior Advisor to the USB, and the invocation offered by Chaplain Kimberly Willis.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Good afternoon. Please join me in prayer that is commensurate with your faith tradition and/or spirituality. Let us pray. Holy and gracious one, we gather today to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the GI Bill, a landmark piece of legislation that forever transformed the landscape of opportunity in our nation. We are filled with profound gratitude for the foresight and compassion that birthed this program in a time of immense hardship. This act of faith, fueled by a deep respect for those who served, unlocked a new chapter for millions. We stand in humble appreciation for the countless veterans who, empowered by the GI Bill, transformed their lives and the lives of generations to come. Their stories are testaments to the enduring power of opportunity and the American spirit. We pray that the legacy of the GI Bill continue to inspire future generations to invest in the well-being of those who serve and for continuing blessings upon our veterans past and present. May they ever know the depth of our gratitude and the unwavering support of a grateful nation. Amen.
Thank you to Chaplain Willis and Maureen. Please be seated. So today, June 22nd, 2024, we celebrate 80 years since the GI Bill was introduced in 1944. This bill helped World War II veterans with affordable home loans and money for education and job training. It boosted the U.S. economy for many years and has been credited for forming America's middle class. Since 2009, VA has awarded tens of billions of dollars of earned benefits to help more than 2.7 million veterans pay for their education to smooth their transition from the military to civilian employment. Since 1944, VA has guaranteed trillions of dollars in home loans. In 2023 alone, VA guaranteed over 1,600 loans every business day. Almost 90% of those loans didn't require veterans to have to make a down payment. In addition to regular loans, VA's Specially Adaptive Housing Program has awarded tens of thousands of dollars in earned grants since 1948 to help disabled veterans buy, modify, or build homes suited to their needs. We're gathered to commemorate 80 years of giving back to service members and veterans who have sacrificed for us. Today is a day to reflect on the successes and the ongoing importance of the benefits provided by the GI Bill. I'm excited for our program today, and I hope that you are as well. Thank you so much for being here. So let's get started. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Shannon Nantavong. He served in the United States Marine Corps for more than 22 years. He is currently the American Legion's Executive Director of Government and Veterans Affairs. Mr. Nantavong, thank you for being here today, and the podium is yours, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today I'd like to take you back to the 1940s, a time when the United States was emerging from the shadows of World War II. Amidst the triumph and relief, a pressing concern loomed over the horizon: how to reintegrate millions of returning veterans to civilian life. This is where the American Legion's pivotal role in the creation of the GI Bill becomes a story of vision, advocacy, and profound impact. The American Legion, founded in 1919 by veterans of the Great War, have always been committed to supporting those who served. As World War II drew to a close, the organization foresaw the potential challenges that veterans would face, including unemployment, lack of education, and insignificant housing. Recognizing the urgent need for comprehensive support, the Legion took the initiative to draft what will become the most transformative pieces of legislation in America's history. The Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944, commonly known as the GI Bill. The process began in earnest. It was meeting in 1943 at the Mayflower Hotel right down the road. Here, influential Legionnaires, including National Commander Henry W. Comary, outlined the key components of the bill on hotel stationery. Commander Comary's handwritten draft, which we still have in our possession, laid the foundation for a revolutionary approach to veterans' benefits. The journey from draft to law was not without its challenges. The American Legion had to navigate a complex political landscape, advocating for the bill's passage amidst skepticism and competing interests. I don't see VFW or DAV in the room. They failed to show up again. Oh, you're here. DAV showed up today. So, regardless, through the relentless lobbying and public campaigns, compelling testimonies of veterans, the Legion succeeded in galvanizing bipartisan support. And on June 22nd, 1944, President Roosevelt signed the GI Bill into law. The American Legion's role in writing the GI Bill exemplifies how dedicated advocacy and visionary policymaking can address critical and social needs. By anticipating the challenges veterans would face and crafting comprehensive support, the Legion not only honored the sacrifice of millions, but also paved the way for a more prosperous and equitable America. The GI Bill remains a testament to what could be achieved when we come together to support those who have given so much for our freedom and security. Now, it is my honor to introduce the Department of Veterans Affairs Chief of Staff, Ms. Kimberly Jackson. Before arriving at VA, Ms. Jackson served as Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Force Readiness, as well as a range of national security and veterans policy positions in the Department of Defense, Capitol Hill, and nonprofit institutions. She's also a United States Navy Reserve veteran, but not a Legionnaire, not yet. She is also a military spouse. Please join me in welcoming VA's Chief, Ms. Kimberly Jackson.
Well, I'm embarrassed enough to go home. All right, so thank you so much for being here, everyone. Congressman Baird, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for your courageous service in Vietnam. Gunnery Sergeant Nuntavong, Shinin, thank you for your 22 years of service, your continued service, and your advocacy for veterans, and for that kind introduction. Terry, is Terry Tennelly in here? Well, I'll thank her in absentia. Terry and the rest of our federal partners, thank you so much for joining us and supporting veterans. Let me also welcome the state directors of Veterans Affairs, state and county veteran service officers, and all those leading and representing America's veteran service organizations. A big thanks to Megan Edmondson, Craig Coleman, and the whole VBA comms team for their hard work in getting us together. I was just mentioning to Megan that this was one of the most professional events that I have seen come out of the VA, so thank you all very much. So I'm going to be brief today because the most important voices that we're going to hear are from veterans that we're privileged and honored to serve. Now, one of the most important reasons for occasions such as these is to reflect on lessons that we can learn from moments in history that are genuinely transformational. In this case, it's about learning how to get better at fulfilling what President Biden calls our most sacred obligation, that is, to prepare those that we send into harm's way and to care for them and their families when they return home. We can take many lessons from the enactment and our implementation of the Servicemen's Readjustment Act, the GI Bill of Rights. I'm just going to hit three. First, success is not measured against inputs. It's measured against outcomes, and it's measured against impact. We often point to inputs when it comes to things like the GI Bill. Inputs, such as how many dollars that we've put in, which is no small matter. With that first GI Bill, the country put in about $14.5 billion into veterans' education and training, which is around $167 billion in today's dollars. Nearly half, or 7.8 million, of the 16 million World War II veterans got technical or vocational training or went to college or graduate school. Those are inputs. They're important inputs, but they're still just inputs. What's even more meaningful is the impact, the outcomes, what those veterans did with those inputs, or what I like to call, as Kevin and Kristen know well, the so what and who cares. Well, those veteran engineers and electricians, those accountants and carpenters, those doctors, dentists, teachers, builders, and so much more, they ignited and they fueled our post-war economy. It was their scientific, medical, and technological breakthroughs that led our nation to be the global leader that we are today. And we're still drawing on those dividends, the dividends of what they built, still benefiting from their legacy, their example of courage, and their belief in possibilities. That is impact. That is what we should measure. Second, and Shinin helped drive this point home talking about the enormous effort getting the GI Bill across the finish line. Never forget or neglect America's veteran service organizations. About a year before President Roosevelt even had a chance to sign the GI Bill, he told the country in a fireside chat that he had promised American service members fighting the war that the American people would not let them down when the war is won. Even today, it's the same promise this country makes to the young people who sign up to serve. If you fight for us, we'll fight for you when you come home. But promises without accountability, they can fall short. And that is why our country's VSOs are so important. Their powerful advocacy, their thunderous voices. They hold all of us accountable to veterans, their families, caregivers, and survivors. At VA, we're grateful for that. We depend on that. VA and veterans have no better partner than the VSOs. And third point, for today and for our future, we must invest in America's veterans. Give them the opportunity to succeed, empower their ability to do what they want with their lives. Now, a lot has changed since 1944. And thanks in large part to VSOs, to Congress, and to so many other advocates, the GI Bill has kept pace. It's been evolving and fueling the dreams of veterans since its inception. The Korean conflict GI Bill, the Vietnam era GI Bill, the Montgomery GI Bill, the post-9/11 GI Bill, and the Forever GI Bill. We've brought access to the benefit into the 21st century with the digital GI Bill and with tools like Enrollment Manager that leverage advances in automation to streamline processes and serve veterans and their families faster and better. But here is what has not changed. First, our commitment to enable veterans, their families, and their survivors through the GI Bill, no matter what their aspirations are. Second, the capacity, courage, and unstoppable drive of America's veterans to succeed, contribute, lead their communities, and give back to their country. Let me tell you about just a few. There's Chris Velasquez, who served in the Air Force as a Missile and Space Systems electronic maintenance specialist. Chris used his GI Bill to earn his degree in mechanical engineering at the University of Central Florida. Today, Chris works on our country's most advanced defense systems. There's Reggie Santiago, who combined his military medical training with the Veterans Readiness and Employment Program, or VRE. Reggie just graduated summa cum laude from the East Carolina University with his Bachelor of Science in Nursing. For first-generation American Ruben Ramos, the GI Bill was his only path to college. Ruben earned his associate's degree in Administration of Justice at Southwestern Community College in Chula Vista, California. He went on to San Diego State, where he earned his Bachelor of Science in Criminology with a minor in Sociology. And today, he's again serving our country as an Immigration Service Officer in San Diego. And my good friend, Navy Commander Kevin Powers, is here with us today. Kevin is a prime example of an exemplary veteran whose success was in part enabled by the GI Bill. When Kevin transitioned from active duty to the Navy Reserve, he used the GI Bill to earn a Master of Science in Finance at Georgetown University. The GI Bill gave Kevin the security he needed to focus on his studies without the burden of additional debt, providing a secure foundation for Kevin and his family. That advanced degree has been critical to Kevin's career. It has opened doors of opportunity that might otherwise have been closed. It prepared him for the kind of high-level, high-pressure decision-making that's demanded in both the public and the private sectors. And it's a big reason that today, Kevin is a successful leader at a major consulting firm where he's a critical member of the team providing analysis to the Department of Defense that informs which munitions and which equipment we can provide to our allies and to our partners, such as Ukraine. And I can say, from personal experience of working with him, we are all better off when veterans like Kevin get opportunities to pursue education and training to further their careers, and in doing so, change the lives of so many others. All of which is to say, veterans are and will remain one of America's greatest sources of strength. And since 1944, it's been the GI Bill, giving them the opportunity to succeed, enabling them to thrive, and to keep this country strong. There is no better investment. Josh, thanks for the opportunity to spend some time with this group this afternoon. Thank you for your leadership. And thank you to all of you, my sincere thanks for what you're doing to help this country, to help VA, to fulfill our promise to veterans, their families, survivors, and caregivers. I appreciate the time. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
Ms. Jackson, thanks so much for that. I really resonated with the whole idea behind what's the impact, what's the personal impact, and the so what. One of the many things that I've learned under the leadership of Undersecretary Jacobs is when you're reading through products and documents, Facts are great, but what does it actually mean? What does it mean to the person, to the veterans, to the human beings that are behind those facts? So it's so important. So thank you so much for that. And I think that's just a great segue into the next portion of our program. We're going to hear some personal stories. And I am not a veteran. I have been a VA employee for several years, but I am married to a service-disabled Air Force veteran, and our family has very much benefited from the GI Bill. My husband got a degree in music and also biblical studies using the GI Bill. He's a full-time pastor now. And we bought our first home. Shortly after we got married, we were able to buy our first home down in Atlanta, Georgia, because of the GI Bill. So I'm very, very thankful for the VA and for VA employees and for what the GI Bill has done for not just my family, but many families. So I'm very excited to just introduce our second portion of this next portion of the program. Named to Forbes 30 Under 30 in 2024 as an innovative entrepreneur shaping the future, Brian Jenkins began leading the Armed Services Arts Partnership, also known as ASAP, at age 24. ASAP provides free art and comedy classes to veterans, service members, military family members, and caregivers, taught by veterans, made for veterans. Mr. Jenkins has grown the organization from a small startup nonprofit to the nation's largest military arts organization. Please help me to welcome Brian Jenkins and the ASAP team.
How are we doing, folks? Yeah? I'm so grateful to be here. As Pamela said, Armed Services Arts Partnership, ASAP, we're the nation's largest military arts organization. And our mission is to foster creative communities where veterans and their families can thrive through the arts. We're all about active participation, digging deep, and using the arts as a set of tools to better understand ourselves and our world, and then share that with an audience. So when we have an extraordinarily successful set of legislation that we really ought to be celebrating and telling the story of, it's so important that we are passing the mic to the veterans who've benefited from it or have the potential to benefit from it. And so that's why we are so, so grateful to be here with you all today to celebrate all of the impact that's happened with this extraordinary legislation. So I'm going to get off the stage and I'm going to invite some veterans up to tell their stories with you. These folks are all graduates of our programs. They're all extraordinarily talented, and I can tell you that they have so many more stories than just the ones that they're going to share with you now. Central to the mission is ensuring that folks understand we have a lifetime of experiences to share and to process, whether that's through stand-up comedy, storytelling, improv, creative writing, acting, drawing, so many other things. And so, like many of these other phenomenal VSOs in the room, we're building on the foundation of the GI Bill, which ensures that veterans can come home with economic security, education, and an affordable physical home. Organizations like ASAP and our other peer VSOs, we're here to make sure that folks can return home with their whole selves beyond that foundation. So please welcome up to the stage your storytellers, Tamara Addison, a Navy veteran, poet, theater director, and creativity coach and author. Please welcome Dustin Elias, Army retiree, JD candidate, husband to an Army veteran, and father of 3. Please welcome Dr. Rhonda Lawson, Army veteran, speaker, and author. And lastly, please welcome Ann Barlieb, Army veteran, storyteller, poet, and writer. Tamara, the mic is all yours. Yeah, come around.
I come from a small town in Reed, Arkansas. 395 people. We're 394 now that I'm gone. And as you can imagine, everyone knows everybody, and that we are a close-knit community. And as a community, we all have benefited from each other, whether it was mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and sometimes financially. And we have each other's back. And the question always came up, who else would care for us like us. See, if you were to take a magnifying glass and zoom into our town, it wouldn't take you long to see acts of love, the sharing, the kindness, the goodwill, the culture, and community. We've always been vested in the lives around us. My people, my town, takes pride in knowing that even if we didn't have a lot, we gave of our resources without hesitation or reservation. Because as my grandmother used to say, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, which means what is appropriate for everyone is equally appropriate for others. And even if we didn't have the same thing or the same circumstances, we all had this living experience in common and wanted the best for ourselves and others. So, when I left home and joined the Navy at the tender age of 18 to blossom into a productive member of society and the military, I was afraid. I was afraid of leaving my family, my support, my mainline, because who else is going to treat you like family? Make sure you're okay. And that lingering question, who else would care for us like us? So I stand before you to answer this question proudly, loudly, and boldly. The Veteran Benefit Administration can, they did, and they will. Can you remember where you were the following years? 2000, 2004, 2010, 2015. I do. I was standing at a graduation receiving one of my college degrees, a Associate of Arts, a Bachelor's of Arts, 2 master's degrees, one in theater and the other in education. The Veterans Benefit Administration implementation of the GI Bill gave me access to a world-class education, no matter if I was on sea or land. And because of this benefit, I was able to provide for my family. I was able to break generational chokehold and create generational wealth. And I was able to be the first person out of my grandmother's 12 grandchildren and children and 50 grandchildren to receive all these degrees. And I am now a public school teacher, and my future, as well as the youth, continues to look bright because I am able to take care of their educational needs. And as I take care of the youth, the Veterans Benefit Administration continues to answer the question from my youth: who else would care for us like us? They can, they will, and they did, proudly, loudly, and boldly. It is a satisfying and rewarding experience to have your needs met, to be supported and be part of a bigger community whose goal is to ensure your success and transition back into the mainstream world is seamless and easy, especially if life has changed dramatically as it has been for me and my family. However, the Veterans Benefit Administration has always stepped up and provided as I have for my kids, which reminds me of the last time I had a huge milestone. As a single mother veteran, a teacher in the DC public schools with 3 kids, I wanted to buy a house and not live in an apartment, and not just any house, but a house where I could bake cookies in an open kitchen, a house where my son could play just 4 steps outside the door, a house that we could call home for the first time. And I just knew I didn't qualify because of so many circumstances. I'm a teacher, single income, post-COVID housing market, but who came through proudly, loudly, and boldly, the Veteran Administration with a VA home loan, no funding fee, and no money down. They took care of me once again, and we've been in this house now for multiple years. I do believe that if the VBA was not established 80 years ago for service people, opportunities would have been lost, dreams would still be deferred, and I would not be speaking to you today. 28 years ago, when I left home, scared and afraid and unable to answer the question, who else would care for us like us? I couldn't imagine that the Veterans Benefit Administration would be that answer. And as I stated before, they can, they will, and they did, proudly, loudly, and boldly. So, on behalf of my small town in Reed, Arkansas, my family, and me, Petty Officer Second Class Yeoman Walker, I want to say thank you.
It's a bucket list item, get to talk in DC with a teleprompter. And it's not working for me, but item checked. It's pretty good. $200,000. Movies shaped my expectation of what it would be like to spend $200,000 in cash. Be a briefcase, a metal one, handcuffed to me, crisp $100 bills inside. Person I give it to, they'd have to use one of those bank machines to count it, you know, or it'd just be too much to count, so they'd have to weigh it. The actual experience wasn't anything like that. No briefcase, no handcuffs. There wasn't even cash. It was just, I just pushed a button on my phone, but I didn't really push a button. I swiped, like I was watching TikTok. I spent $200,000 like I was watching TikTok. I grew up po, and I don't say that because I'm from Oklahoma and we don't enunciate correctly. I say that because I was too po to afford the R. And you know, it wasn't uncommon for me to come home, turn on the light switch, and I'm still in darkness because my parents couldn't pay the electricity bill. Or when we finally did pay the electricity bill, I'd get up early on Saturday and come to the TV to watch my Saturday morning cartoons, G.I. Joe, Scooby-Doo, He-Man, and turn on the TV and just static, because my parents paid the electricity bill instead of the cable bill, which makes sense. If we paid the cable bill and not the electricity, it really wouldn't work, right? But, you know, we were on food stamps, and I went to bed hungry sometimes, but I never starved. And my parents, they worked hard. They worked hard to provide. But it was a struggle, like it was for most people in my small Oklahoma town. And, you know, those struggles, they taught me hard work and ethic. And they taught me that there were things more important than money. And, you know, those values and those lessons, it's probably why I joined the Army later in life, right? And joining the Army, that was the second best decision I've ever made in my life. It was the second best because it led to the best decision I ever made in my life, which was meeting and marrying my wife, right? And we were stationed in Germany, you know, for 3 years, and we came back without a cuckoo clock. We came back with 2 kids. They were our kids. We didn't like kidnap European kids or anything like that, you know. But as our military careers progressed, it became harder to both be in the military and take care of our kids. So my wife, she discharged from the military through a medical board and chose to be a stay-at-home mom. And the Army decided that was the perfect time to send me to Korea for 2 years. So after Korea, though, I was scheduled to go to Fort Lewis, Washington, which is great because that's where my wife's from. So while I would be in Korea, my wife could live close to her family, and we found a great rental property that was only like 2 blocks, maybe 3, from her mom. And I left in full confidence that if my wife had problems, she had family next to her. The landlord was crazy, or as we would say in Korean, michin saram, right? My wife would wake up at 5 in the morning because he's like up there walking on the roof, or he'd show up at odd hours and then be mad because there's dirty dishes in the kitchen. So he was just driving her crazy. And at the same time, we discovered that our 2 children were on the autism spectrum disorder. So a lot going on for my wife at this time. And I called her up on Skype, and she told me, she said, "This landlord, he's driving me crazy." And for those that know my wife, that is an accurate representation of her. She sings differently than she talks, okay? But I pointed out, but the next landlord, he might be just as crazy. You might as well stay next to your mom, because Skype distorts my voice a little bit, right? That's how it sounded. And then she said, "Well, what about buying a house?" And I'm a staff sergeant, so that means I make maybe $3,000 a month. We weren't just po, we were puh, right? Love, we can't afford a house. "Oh, yes, we can. We can use the VA loan, and I don't have to pay lending fees because I'm a disabled vet." So she'd done her homework, and she'd gotten pre-approved for the loan, and she'd already decided the house that she was going to buy. So she really wasn't asking if we were going to buy a house. She was kind of just telling me we were. And so we did. So we, and by we I mean her, she bought our first house while I was in Korea. And my family was happy. And I came home, and we were happy. And we've used VA loans as we moved, as you know, in the military. I know it's hard to believe, but occasionally the Army did move us. And when we did move, instead of electing to have a crazy landlord, we continued to use VA loans and purchase homes. As a minority that grew up in Oklahoma, in Oklahoma, the chance of me leaving Oklahoma and having a good paying job and owning a home were next to nothing, right? Home ownership is the fastest way to build wealth, aside from winning the lottery. But minorities are disproportionately represented when it comes to home ownership. Therefore, they miss out on the opportunity to build and amass wealth. A couple of years ago, my wife comes up to me and says, "I want to buy a cabin in Roanoke, along the Roanoke River." And I say, "But I don't want another mortgage." I'm not on Skype, but I thought I'd keep the dialogue consistent throughout, right? "We don't need another mortgage. We can use the equity that we have in our houses to buy the cabin for free, or not for free, but with cash." And, she'd done her homework again, right? And so due to the wealth that we've amassed through homes that we've bought, because of the VA loan program, I was able to pay $200,000 in cash, have my moving moment, but just no briefcase.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So when I got ready to tell this story, I got nervous. I had to shrink a 25-year journey into 6 minutes. So bear with me on this. But I have a question for you, and this was touched upon in the prayer, and I want to thank you so much for saying what you said, but how many of you realize that the decisions that you make in your youth can often affect the next generation tomorrow? I learned that throughout this process as I was telling this story. So I grew up the daughter of 2 Air Force non-commissioned officers. And growing up in a military environment taught me one thing, that I never wanted to join the military. I mean, I had a plan. I was going to go to college, I was going to become a lawyer, and I was going to make lots of money. That was my plan. But when you make a plan, God has a sense of humor. So that sense of humor started in my senior year of high school. One of my friends said, "Hey, Rhonda, the recruiters are giving the ASVAB in the auditorium. Let's go take the test." I said, "Girl, I'm not trying to join the Army. I'm going to be a lawyer." And she said, "Girl, I'm not trying to join the Army either. Let's just get out of class for a couple hours." I was like, say less. So we had an excused absence from class. We went to the auditorium. We took the ASVAB. After that, I thought nothing else of it. A few months later, we graduated from high school. I went on to attend Loyola University, one of the most prestigious schools in New Orleans. Coincidentally, my friend went on to the Army. So the college was fun. You know, after I got my footing together, I was making pretty good grades. I joined a sorority. But about 2.5 years in, I realized that college is expensive. And this school I went to was a pretty penny. So I had a choice. I could either try to muddle through my final year and a half, maybe get another job on top of the part-time job I had at Burger King and the work-study job that I had at the school, or I could sit out for a year, try to make the money that I owed Loyola University, and then go back to school. Little did I know, on the other side of the city, there was this Army recruiter who was going through his files and ran across my name. And I guess I must have done pretty well on that ASVAB because he picked up the phone and called me and said, "Hey, may I speak to Rhonda?" I said, "This is Rhonda." "Rhonda, are you still interested in joining the Army?" Now, in my mind, I was going to say, "Sir, I was never interested in joining the Army. I only took that test to get out of class that day." But common sense prevailed, and I had a conversation with this recruiter. And a few months later, I signed a contract for 5 years as a public affairs specialist. In return, I would get the Army College Fund and the GI Bill. And so the plan had changed, but it was still in effect. So I went to my first duty station, Fort Knox, Kentucky, and started taking every class I could take. I still owed Loyola money, so I couldn't apply to anything, right? But I could take a class here or there. So I took as many classes as I could. But then I got to the point where I had taken all of the lower level classes that I could take, and I had to apply to a college and start pursuing a degree. But I still owed Loyola money. So I said, okay, well, the plan is still in effect, but I'm gonna have to put it on the back burner for a second. And in the meantime, I was starting to enjoy my career. I was moving through, became a sergeant, then a staff sergeant. I became a sergeant first class. Well, right before I became sergeant first class, a little thing called 9/11 happened. And a few months later, remember, 9/11 happened in September. I was on a plane headed to Afghanistan 6 months later. My first time leading a group of soldiers into combat, and I still felt like I was a new soldier myself. But thank God we made it back alive. Everybody was good. And the blessing that came out of that is I made so much in combat pay that I paid Loyola. I paid my student loans. I paid off some debt. And I'm like, okay, it's back in effect. So I went to my next duty station, which happened to be Sinai, Egypt. And I sat at the table with some fellow soldiers, and somebody said, are you gonna apply to school? And I was like, oh yeah, I paid off my tuition, I can do that. So I went to the University of Maryland office and I applied. I got accepted, and the plan was back on. I was going to get my bachelor's degree. So I got my bachelor's degree from the University of Maryland. Never touched my GI Bill or my Army College Fund because there was a wonderful thing called tuition assistance, and I used it. And then I said, you know what, I think I want a master's degree. So still didn't touch my GI Bill or my Army College Fund because the little bit of money I had to pay on top of tuition assistance did not necessitate me touching that fund. So I left it alone. And then I finished my master's degree, and then it was time to go to Iraq. I'm like, these combat deployments love me. And so I finished my master's degree, came back from Iraq, and then I found out that I could take my benefits that I never touched after I received my 2 degrees, and I was able to give them to my daughter, who was a preteen at the time. So I went to the office, I transferred all of my benefits to my daughter. And in 2018, well, I decided I was going to pursue my doctorate. And in 2018, the year that I finished my doctorate, my daughter graduated from high school and went on to the Clark Atlanta University, debt-free. So I want to thank Uncle Sam for that. And then I thought about it. Had my friend not invited me to go skip class for a couple hours and go take a test that I just knew I was never going to use, would I have, one, served what should have been a 5-year enlistment, 23 years in the United States Army, and retiring as a master sergeant? Would I have gotten a bachelor's degree from the University of Maryland, University College, now Global Campus? Would I have gotten a master's degree from the University of Oklahoma? Would I have gotten a doctorate from North Central University? Would I have started my own company and founded the Black History Month Literary Weekend, where I now give scholarships? Would I have been able to encourage the hundreds of soldiers that I've encouraged to finish school, even if they are pursuing their career in the military? And would I be living in a beautiful home that I was able to purchase because of my VA loan? And would my daughter, now that I am a retired, 100% disabled veteran, be able to apply to her master's program using the Chapter 35 benefits? So all of those decisions were made, and they affected the next generation. So, Uncle Sam, I want to thank you for sending 2 hard-headed women to college and putting us in a beautiful home. Thank you.
Can you hear me okay? All right. It's probably unusual, but the original time for this event was 10 o'clock this morning. It was moved to 1. For the last 7 years, I've been attending a weekly PTSD group on Thursdays at 1. And in order to be here, I had to let the doctor know I wouldn't be there today. Otherwise, I'm at risk for a missed appointment, and I don't want that on my near-perfect record. And so I can tell you right now, there's a group of service members and veterans sitting around in chairs talking about something really difficult right now. The chairs are uncomfortable and they don't feed us. So you know the group is there to work through what needs working through. It's hard work, it's worthwhile work, it's life-affirming work. So it might be unconventional in a setting like this, but I'd like to dedicate what I'm about to share to that PTSD group and to all of us who are right now working through whatever is most difficult. In mid-May, I received an invitation by email to share a personal story at this 80th anniversary celebration event of the Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944. However, having not yet used the GI Bill, VA home loan, or VRNE, I regrettably had to admit that I don't really have a personal experience with these resources to share, and I'd have to decline. A follow-up email encourages me. This is a very special occasion and an important opportunity. Please give it some additional consideration. So on a near almost perfect summer afternoon, I take the storyteller in me out for a walk, as I often do when trying to discover where and how I belong and what is mine to contribute. I'm fortunate to live in a safe, sidewalk neighborhood with beautiful houses on amazingly landscaped lots where I can literally stop and smell different roses on every street corner. And as I do, it occurs to me that my not using the GI Bill, VA home loan, or VRNE is my personal experience with these resources. And while perhaps not as impressive as one that ends with a degree earned, a career change made, or a house bought, it is nonetheless an important story and one worth sharing for at least two reasons that I think of. First, because of its less obvious but essential significance. And second, because it's not uncommon. In fact, according to the Brookings Institute, only 41% of service members who are eligible use the post-9/11 GI Bill. To date, less than half of service members eligible for this incredible benefit actually use it. So at least by the numbers, my experience is the more common one. On the surface, this might seem discouraging, and that's why personal storytelling like this, beyond the statistics, is so important. A service member has 4 options when it comes to the GI Bill, presumably in the order of importance from most ideal scenario to least. Service members can 1, use it for themselves, 2, transfer it to a dependent, 3, not use it yet, or 4, not use it at all, maybe because they don't know or they forget they know about it, don't want to, or for whatever unfortunate and absolutely false reason, they don't believe that going to school or owning a home is possible for them. Thanks to the 2017 Forever GI Bill legislation, which eliminated the 15-year use it or lose it stipulation, for those of us who have served on this side of 2013, our GI Bill never expires. So we have a whole lifetime to consider what, if anything, we may want to study. Before I commissioned into the Army nearly 20 years ago, I completed a 5-year program earning a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and a master's degree in public administration. In 2018, after 2 combat tours and 14 years of honorable service as a helicopter pilot, psychological operations officer, and strategist, I medically retired with a 100% permanent and total rating from the Departments of Defense and Veterans Affairs. Next month, I will have been retired for 6 years. I just turned 43 years old. As a result of my service-connected conditions, I'm unable to maintain full-time employment. Thankfully, for the time being at least, I can comfortably enough live through my combat-related medical retirement. Knowing I have the GI Bill helps me continue to dream of better days ahead and consider what's possible beyond my current circumstances, especially on days when I find myself bedbound with debilitating pain and my world seems impossibly limited and hopeless. It sounds silly to say it out loud here, but the truth is, in those moments, I do so often think to myself, well, at least I have the GI Bill and I could always go back to school someday if I wanted. And then I start to wonder, to daydream about what I might study. Sometimes I call the VA or another VSO just to talk about the resources that are available. These conversations leave me feeling abundant, hopeful, and inspired. It reminds me that even though I may not be able to get out of bed today, and tomorrow might be scheduled with fasting blood work followed by back-to-back doctor's appointments, the future for me is full of potential, opportunities, and resources to help me architect a whole new reality, a reality I can't even begin to imagine because it's so different from the life I know now. I love to look at the classes and the programs available at different schools. I love imagining myself on the campuses and in the classrooms. I love doing the math and calculating how much I will not have to pay in order to go back to school and study something I actually enjoy, something fun and impractical, something reckless that my parents wouldn't approve of or ever pay for, something that's a complete waste of money but makes life feel like it's worth living at least some of the time. Something like creative writing, sociology, or philosophy. It's most unfortunate that accredited institutions don't offer degrees or certifications in ghost hunting, astrology, numerology, human design, or feng shui. Maybe someday in the not too distant future they will, and hopefully my body allows me to meet that opportunity with great enthusiasm. And if so, I'll be thankful I didn't go ahead and blow it on something completely useless like political science or theology. That said, in the meantime, I love talking with fellow veterans about their experiences using the GI Bill or VRNE and knowing that it is possible for me too. In the last 2 years alone, I've been invited to and/or attended 5 GI Bill-funded graduations at 5 different prestigious universities in 4 states along the East Coast, 2 bachelor's degrees and 3 masters, social work, architects, accounting, fine arts, and journalism. Several more veteran friends are currently in MBA programs or working towards certifications in the technology, health services, and fundraising industries. One of my friends is too disabled to work or to go to school. So she gave her GI Bill to her daughter, who will finish nursing school next year, in part, she says, so she can ensure her mother receives quality care for her complex conditions. This is a blessing and a dream come true for both of them as they anticipate the first member of their family to graduate higher education, probably at the top of her class. All this is reassurance enough for me to believe that my own dreams and blessings await discovery. On that note, I'm so happy to say this is a to-be-continued kind of story. And so I so appreciate the opportunity to share it on this special day with people I know who know that the GI Bill is all about more, so much more than paying tuition, earning degrees, and buying houses. Hope is in this room, and I'm grateful to everyone who makes that hope possible. Thank you so much.
That was amazing. Amazing, right? As VA employees who work here in central office, one of the things that we have to always remember, and like I said it before, whatever we do, whatever paper we sign, whatever legislation we're pushing through, there's a human being at the end of that, right? And it's easy to lose sight of that when you're not at the regional office, when you're not working at the medical center, but it's so important. So thank you so much for just making what we do every day tangible and alive. So I thank you for that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Brian Jenkins, that is awesome. This is awesome. Thank you so much for your organization. Listen, I'm not a veteran. I really want to join. I have a lot of range here. Let me just show you. Let me show you. Hark! Who goes there? Or, you can't handle the truth. What do you think? Can I do it? Awesome. Awesome, awesome. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. We appreciate that. So next we have coming to us Miss Mona Dexter, and she's going to lead us through a much-anticipated panel discussion. Mona Dexter is the VP of Military and Veterans Affairs at Comcast NBC Universal. She leads a team who works to provide strategic leadership to aspects of programs and outreach engaging the military and veteran communities. Ms. Dexter serves on the Department of Veterans Affairs Veterans Advisory Committee on Education, and she's also a proud military spouse. Please welcome Ms. Mona Dexter.
Thank you, Pam, and thank you for putting us after these storytellers. No pressure. But as Kimberly had mentioned, there is no greater, sorry, I'm like at a loss for words here. There is no greater demonstration of impact than the stories that come from just these life-changing moments that have been made possible through the work of the VBA. So again, I would just say thank you for sharing your stories. Thank you for being here. Brian, thank you for providing the space for them to tell these stories. But it's an honor to be here and moderate this panel. Again, as we celebrate the 80th year of the Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944, which really was a driver of economic mobility. We've heard the stories. We can, again, as Kimberly mentioned, we can pull data all day long and we can prove, how much impact and we can prove the outcomes through data. But we've heard the stories, and again, we know that, again, it's been an equalizer and a driver of economic mobility. And as Shannon mentioned earlier, it was very forward-thinking in recognizing that we needed a place for our veterans who were coming home to go, whether it was to school, to home, to careers. So it's been incredibly moving to see this evolution. And in addition to being a former military spouse, I'm also a military mother. I have a son on active duty in the Army, and he is looking at maybe buying his first home at his very painful duty station coming up in Hawaii for 3 years. So I will say, but I also have another son who is going to school on the GI Bill thanks to the transferability benefit. So again, thank you all. With that, though, I want to invite the panelists up one at a time. We've got an esteemed panel here who is going to really be able to speak to their also personal experiences. So first, I would like to invite Keith Hawk with University of Maryland Global Campus to join me on stage. Keith? And Kimberly Mitchell, who I'm just going to say is my co-panelist this entire year, who is a special advisor to the Secretary of the VA. Thank you, Kimberly, for being here. And Secretary Woods, the Secretary of the Maryland Department of Veterans Affairs. And last, definitely not least, Michael Trotter of the Grammy-nominated, critically acclaimed husband and wife duo, The War and Treaty. Thank you. So again, I'd like to start the discussion by putting out a question to all of you and ask you to give us a little bit more background on who you are, share a little bit of your own story. But following your military service, how have the GI Bill, education, home loan, VR&E benefits impacted your personal life and or career? So again, if you could provide a little bit more of an introduction of yourselves and then just share a little bit of the impact. Can I start with you, Keith?
Sure,
okay.
Absolutely. Thanks. So I'm Keith Hawk. I work at University of Maryland Global Campus. I am a veteran. 29 years, 3 months, and 4 days is what's on my DD-214. So me personally, yes, I did. Yes, sir. Personally, every home I've ever bought when I was in the military, I enjoyed the story. My own personal academic journey was partially funded by the GI Bill. I transferred some to my children who have used it. And I think most importantly, on a personal level, I have 3 nephews who serve in the military. One of them was medically retired following wounds in combat. He used Chapter 31 benefits, and I'm proud to say he used those to get his Master of Science in Nursing, and now he works as an ER nurse in St. Louis, Missouri. My other nephew, who's still serving, used VA top-up because he wanted to get his master's degree. So he used his post-9/11 GI Bill, used the top-up program to get his master's degree while he was serving on active duty. So from a personal level, it's greatly affected my life. And I loved what the storytellers said about how it changes their lives, because at UMGC, and I loved what Dr. Lawson said, I didn't pay her to say that, by the way, but it really is about, for me on a personal or professional level and a personal level, how do we inspire hope and change lives? And I was so touched by your story because, you know, for the last almost 9 years now that I've been blessed to be part of the institution I work for, your story is exactly what we come to work and try to do for all of our students and their families each and every single day. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And that's just a demonstration of how many people in one family have been touched by these benefits. So thank you. Kimberly, can we go to you, Kim?
Good afternoon. I'm Kim Mitchell. I'm the Senior Advisor, VSO Liaison at the VA for the Office of Secretary. Navy veteran. I went to Uncle Sam's Canoe U on the Severn River, AKA the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis. And unfortunately, during my 17 years in the Navy did also send me to George Washington University. Obviously, I did not use my GI Bill at all during that time when I was in the Navy. And honestly, I didn't, during my career in running and leading nonprofits, since my Navy time, I didn't think that I would ever be using my GI Bill or going back to school or even need to go back to school. And it wasn't until I came to VA and I started working with folks from the wonderful Veterans Benefits Administration, and they started talking to me. I think it was even Mike Frew talked to me about why am I not using my GI Bill, because I got out, you know, on the dark side of 2013, so I only had 15 years to use my GI Bill, and so I decided I might as well give it a shot. And so I'm currently using my GI Bill to get my doctorate, 18 months into a 2-year program. I haven't lost it yet. I've been coming pretty close to, you know, whoever thought of being a full-time student at the time of being a full-time worker, we're going to have a little conversation after we're all done with this. But I've also used my home loan guarantee from the VA to purchase my home in Maryland. And so just as, you know, having worked with the thousands of organizations and the thousands of veterans over the course of the last decade or so, I've seen how purchasing a home, using your GI Bill, and getting education has enhanced and enriched our veterans and their families' lives. It's enabled them to reach their potential for greatness and opened possibilities unbeknownst to them at the time. But having those opportunities open up to consider things that they may have never considered before is just a world beyond, I think, any of our imagination. And I've enjoyed hearing the stories and the personal stories, because that's what it's all about, is opening up those doors of possibilities.
And that's such an important point you make, that there is no single time. Again, never say never, right? And so the beauty of these benefits is that they're available really further down the road. So you might not be ready to make that decision at the moment, but they will still be there. Yeah. Okay, well, Tony, speaking of economic drivers in Maryland and Kim buying a house in Maryland, right?
I love this.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about you and how you got to where you are.
Of course. So yes, Tony Woods served as Secretary of Veterans Affairs for Maryland, soon to be the Department of Veterans and Military Families on July 1st, which we're very excited about as well. I think the thing that I took away from hearing the storytellers and kind of reflecting on my own experience is the impact of these benefits to change families, not just individuals. And my family story is very much the same. One thing that Kimberly mentioned that I think is also worth pointing out, so we're celebrating the 80-year anniversary of the GI Bill, but we also recently marked the 75th anniversary of desegregation of the military. And I actually think it's worth thinking about those two moments in combination, because my family, we really realized that this was the path to the middle class, right? So my grandfather was poor enough where, born in Tennessee, they couldn't afford to raise him. They sent him to a family in Indiana. He joined the Air Force, served for 25 years. He used the GI Bill to purchase his home, and that changed the trajectory of our family's life. His example inspired my mom to also serve in the Air Force. So she served for a very short time. She had to leave the Air Force when getting pregnant with me, but she returned to that home. and I was born at Travis Air Force Base, which is where I was raised. She worked as a housekeeper, and so seeing her experience, she worked 6 days a week, worked incredibly hard, but I knew she wasn't going to be able to help me go to college. And so service was going to be my chance to go, to make it to the middle class. So I had a chance to go to West Point. I will leave my comments to myself, Kim. So I had a chance to go to West Point, and the military, of course, provided me a path to education. I got a master's degree from the Kennedy School, and was able to use my GI Bill benefits to go to the University of Maryland to get an executive MBA. My husband and I, we purchased our home, which we live in, and so it has really transformed the nature of our family. And we often talk about intergenerational wealth as money that we hand down, but there is something about the power of knowledge, and I think military families in particular know that access to these benefits, that is something to pass down to your family as well, and that is something that has certainly benefited me.
Thank you so much for sharing that and keeping, this tame panel here. But
Exactly.
I should have put somebody
Keeping it
between
friendly.
the two of
Keeping
you.
it friendly.
Didn't think about that. But that's so true that the military, but also the VA, have really been agents of change, on many fronts. So thank you. Okay, Michael.
Oh boy. Well, hello. I am still trying to figure out why I'm even up here. This is so awesome. I'm a post 9/11 guy, and so I probably should have been with that group because my story is a little odd.
We're all together here.
Yeah, well, not really when you hear this. So I am, okay, so how do I make this quick? So I'm 2-time Grammy nominated. Me and my wife, we are the first African-American husband and wife duo ever nominated for an Academy of Country Music Award and the Country Music Association Award and the AMA Americana, and we won that like 3 times. Now, how do you get to there from the military? Yeah, so I joined the Army because I was a screw-up. I didn't care about school. I didn't care about anything except surviving. And there's a girl named Michaela Tanice Trotter. She's my firstborn, my daughter. And she came. And I was like, okay, I'm in trouble now because I've got no job. I've got no experience of being a dad, of course. And so I asked, this one guy in my church at the time, because he just seemed like he would know what he's talking about. And I knew he was pretty high up in the military, but I also knew he was my friend's dad, and he was kind of like a mentor to me. And his name was Barry Black. And Barry, at this time, was the chief of chaplains. And then Barry became a special advisor, I believe, to President Bush at the time, I think. And so I'm like, Barry, man, he knows me as a knucklehead. I'm like, I want to join the military. Like any advice? He's like, full time, and he shoos me away. And I'm like, what the hell was that? So I joined, the Army, and I do my time, but my unit was 1/6 Infantry, 2nd Brigade, 1st Armored Division out of Baumholder, Germany. And you said Germany, and I was like, okay, this is going to be an interesting story. So Germany, I was a part of a rapid deployment unit, and there was no time to learn about what was out there for you if you were exiting the military. In fact, the Army was just arrogant to believe that no one was going to leave, especially after 2 tours of war and you only been in for 3 years. It's like, let's do another one. So I was gone for 18 months on my final deployment. And I had 7 days to reintegrate and to get back over here to the U.S. And my integration was rushed because my unit was returning right back to war. So I didn't know anything about being a veteran. I knew nothing. And I represent that other class that don't know anything about being a veteran. In fact, the only knowledge of being a veteran that we had was the comedians' jokes about shell shock and all that kind of stuff. And so I figured, well, you know, I got all my limbs. I think I'm in my right mind. And Tanya, don't speak about that. And so, you know, I got out and I struggled. And I became what they call a homeless vet. I bounced around in Baltimore, Maryland, from house to house, Laurel, Maryland, house to house, all the way up until the point to where I met my wife, Tanya. And Tanya was going through her own transitional period. And so finally, I was so embarrassed about my service, actually, because when I returned home from war in Baltimore at BWI, there were protesters out there. And I had on my uniform, and they were throwing things at us and calling us murderers and stuff. And so I decided that in my country, it's best that I don't tell people what I had just got finished doing. And it wasn't until 2 years into our marriage where I explained to Tanya why I'm ducking and running and yelling out commands during 4th of July. I'm a war veteran. I went to war, and I'm a little messed up. And so Tanya did her research, and Tanya dug in, and Senator Barbara Mikulski at the time looked into it and shared with us all these different benefits, the things that could help me. And so I had no job also. And so here's where the story gets a little weird, because she said, we'll pay for you to go to school, and then we'll also give you BAH while you're going to school. So for me, that was just 2 paychecks. I didn't care about the school part. I just wanted to get the money, you know. And so, you know, but they will only give you the BAH if you're in school. So, you know, I'm a part of another number that doesn't really care about the schooling. They just want the check. And so I would find different schools. And I am proud to say that I went to probably 10 different schools on my post 9/11, just collecting the check. Didn't complete them. I got bored. I would get bored. And finally, my wife was like, you need to find something that you like. And then I found something I like. I wanted to go to school for music, you know, and so I went. And by this time now, we're at the Warren Treaty, and we had did a concert, and the chair of the music department for Duke saw it and was like, yeah, you know, school is the way. But then one of my professors kicked me out of the class because he was like, this class will dummy you down. Long story, tell you about that some other time. But I also took advantage of the home loan. We bought our first house in Nashville, Tennessee. And now I have a daughter who I am trying to convince her to use the benefits because I'm no longer using the benefits. But I'm also trying to convince her, don't use it like me. Don't try to use it as a paycheck, but, you know, just go to school and you know, get the money. And she takes after me in a lot of ways, and she's not that quick with this yet, but I'm trying to help her along. But had the military, had the VA not bailed us out, it was a bailout system for me. Had I not accessed my benefits at the time I accessed it, I would not have the life I have. I would not be able to go around and even talk about the things that I saw, the stuff I went through. I wouldn't be on award shows and doing anything with my gift. And I certainly would not be up here with you all. I'd probably be out those doors somewhere and still trying to figure it out. So I represent the ones who have a dream but don't know how to access it, and that the VA actually helps access that for them. So that's my little story, and yeah.
Thank you for sharing that story. I think if something is resonating, it's that, again, there's no timestamp on this, right? It's when your time is right, and the VA will be there. I have colleagues who have said, my father was a Vietnam War veteran, and he never accessed his benefits, but now he's got some health conditions. And guess what? He's able to access benefits now. So again, there is no only time, but what we can all do is be the voice, right? Help spread the word. Let's think about how can we spread the word to reach more people, to let them know that these benefits are there and available. That is definitely a call to action that I would put out there. That takes me to a conversation a little bit on the economics of and the social impact that the GI Bill has had over the years. So my career started in higher education and student affairs. I worked predominantly with non-traditional student populations, including student veterans. I actually wrote a paper on this Readjustment Act in graduate school, and this would be a room of people who would actually appreciate that. But Keith, if we can talk a little bit about in what ways you think the educational and economic benefits provided, by both the educational and the home loan benefits have contributed to economic mobility and stability with the students that you have worked with.
Sure. So as I listen to the storytellers and I listen to all of us share our stories and our journeys, one word comes to mind, and that's hope. But an old boss of mine in the Army, also West Point, you're sandwiched, I'm sorry, had a line about hope is not a method. Hope is great, but hope is not a method. Hope needs help. There has to be, whether it's resources, whether it's people, whether it's time, hope needs help. And in terms of what the multitude of GI Bill benefits provide, that's the means to enable that hope, to help fulfill those stories that we heard from the storytellers. And what I see every day in terms of direct impact, with the students that I work with who are veterans using their benefits, is when you think about just the cost of education, buying a house, getting married, having kids, going to college, those are some of the most expensive things we undertake in our adult lives. And the beauty of the benefit that comes under the GI Bill is for two of those things, buying a home and going back to school, it starts to take a lot of those worries, a lot of those concerns off the table. And it provides the means to inspire those dreams and help fulfill that hope. And I see that every day, and it's not just from veterans. Dr. Lawson talked about tuition assistance. We work with a lot of military students who have her exact same journey. It starts almost just with little baby steps with tuition assistance, but then as students find out about these other benefits, they continue to use them, and on and on and on. And it's not just them, their family members take advantage of it, their children. And it really, to me, from an economic perspective and a societal perspective, it's all about how it provides the means to help basically achieve those dreams that we all have, whether it's for ourselves, it's for our families, it's for our kids.
I have something to think about that. I think that the other thing is helping service members understand what's out there when they're getting ready to exit, because this needs to be a part of the reintegration process. This needs to be a part of every service member who's coming out checklist. They need to know, what kind of benefits, especially with education, because a lot of them signed up to go to school, and we could talk about the realities of it is there's no time. When you are in the service, there's no time to really go to school, and you're constantly on the move, especially, God forbid, that you're going to war. So when you come out, it's kind of a thing that's kind of put in the back of your mind. But I know it was for me. I was literally just trying to survive. But once I learned all the education benefits, once I learned that, when I think you had said, going to school and working at the same time. Well, one of the things that helped was that BAH. That really helped cover a lot of the stresses and the load that it would take for someone to access their benefits like that. And having the proper education on what you need to have in order so that you can access the home loan program, because I think that's very important. Our veterans are a lot younger nowadays, And you know what that means. We make a lot of mistakes while you're in the military. Everything is at your fingertips, and your credit gets screwed up because you have access to just everything. And by the time you come out, you have screwed up so much to where the benefits don't really matter. You have a lot of steps you have to take to get in a place to where that benefit will actually matter, especially in the home loan program. So I feel that that's, you know.
That's a great point. That again, we can't do enough to educate those who are eligible for these benefits that they exist, right? So it's great to see that the VA and Department of Defense are working together, along with Department of Labor. There's definitely a coalition around trying to prepare service members for that transition and fully understanding the wealth of benefits that are available. But again, there is no such thing as over-communicating that. So again, how can we as advocates continue to push that communication, make sure that it's going up and down and across, and just sharing that knowledge. So that's a great point that we can't over-educate on that. But speaking of availability of benefits, it's not just through the Department of VA, but it's through the states as well. So Tony, can we talk a little bit about what is, as you're chatting with and as you're meeting veterans, but also military families in the state of Maryland and working to retain these families in the state of Maryland, what are you seeing in terms of awareness of benefits, and how are you as a state, as you're increasing benefits for veterans and military families in Maryland, how are you getting that information out?
Yeah, it's a great point. And one of the things that I didn't mention in kind of my family's story is, so I mentioned my mom served in the Air Force, but she was one of those people where I would imagine if somebody walked up and asked, "Are you a veteran?" she probably wouldn't have said yes, right? And so one of the things we realize, and one of the challenges we have, and I'm sure Undersecretary Jacobs deals with this too, is our women veterans and underrepresented veterans often underconsumed their earned benefits. And so that is one of the most important things that we do in our department in Maryland, is recognizing that if you focus on finding those who are at the margins or those who are underrepresented, and you go the extra mile to reach them, that is one of the most important things we can do. We're really intentional about being more inclusive and expansive in the stories that we tell to make sure people see themselves represented in stories of service, so they might be compelled to go forward and take advantage of their benefits. But then there's also just the practical reality. We have to invest in growing our ability to serve veterans where they are and meet them where they are, right? Have those conversations in places where veterans gather, and then make it clear, we provide a free service to help you gain access to your U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs benefits. And that is one of the most important things we do, and we're very data-driven in the approach that we take for doing that. But I also wanted to add one piece to kind of the core part of your question, retaining veterans. Governor Moore, also a veteran, and we share a very strong belief that this is an incredibly talented population that we have to do everything we can to retain. I think the LinkedIn Veteran Opportunity Report, I think veterans possess, 61% of veterans possess an advanced degree or a degree. That's a highly skilled portion of the workforce. Maryland is blessed to have 14 installations with the Department of Defense. They are aligned to the industries of the future. So that talent pipeline that is leaving those installations in the veteran population in our state is one we have to do everything we can to retain and put them to work, driving our economy forward.
Well, and that's where it really is a partnership. It's the public sector, it's the educational sector, it's the academic sector, it's the private sector, the nonprofit sector, right? We all have to work together to make this happen. Thank you for that leadership. So Kim, speaking of kind of generations, that you mentor cadets at the academy, and you're helping to kind of grow the next generation of leaders in the military. How do you see not just that mentorship helping, but also helping with the education again of utilizing benefits and the impact that again military service and then the associated benefits can have on multiple generations?
Well, it is all about educating. And so, as we go out and as this entire network that we work with, as we meet young folks that are in the service, you have to educate them. And the great thing is getting to work with Undersecretary Jacobs' team and the OTED team and working with the TAP folks is we're looking at ways to outreach to service members prior to their transition out of the military and communicate with them. So it's not so scary. I mean, I remember when I got out of the Navy, I think I got 50 emails from the VA, and I don't know if I opened a lot of them, because it was just information overload. And it was just so much information all at once. And here's the thing is, I was in the space of working with communities and working with educators and working with employers and working with healthcare providers. And so even you mentioned as I talk with midshipmen, and I go around the country and I talk with young cadets and midshipmen and folks that are training to be in the military, a lot of the questions that I get asked is, what are some of the things that they need to think about as they go into the service to lead sailors and Marines, simply because I'm usually at the Naval Academy. And I talked to them, I said, obviously you're going to be learning how to operate your ship, or to lead your division. But I said, one of the things that you really need to focus on is help getting your folks to think about what's next. Helping them to understand that they need to have, that they're going to have this wealth of benefits, of earned benefits in healthcare that are provided by VA once they make that transition, and to start looking at that, and so that when their folks ask them what it is that they should do or what it is that they should apply for, they can be intelligent enough to help educate them. And then for the employers that are out there, you talked about retaining. It's recruiting, educating, training, and retaining. And understanding what the skills, values, and competencies that our veterans and their families, the spouses, bring to organizations. And then enabling them by encouraging them to use their GI Bill benefits. Because when they get advanced degrees and they get degrees and they get education, it can only benefit the organization and the people that that organization is serving.
Thank you for that insight. Keith, if I can come back to you and for a little bit of comparison in terms of, what are you seeing in terms of students who are, paying out of pocket, or versus students using the GI Bill? Like, are you seeing benefits for the student veterans?
So I see tremendous benefit because, as I said earlier, higher education is not an inexpensive proposition. And when I talk to any student at UMGC, whether they are a veteran or they are, just a non-veteran or non-military student using Title IV financial aid, it is an expensive proposition. And I won't call it peace of mind, but it certainly is an assurance that some of the things that other students have to focus on while they are trying to go to school simply are not there for the veteran, because the tuition and the cost of the education is paid for along with the housing allowance on top of it. So certainly there's that. And what we see as a university is, by every standard of measure, when we look at our different types of students, veterans, military, community college students, just civilian students who come to us, because we are the largest adult education institution by far within the state of Maryland. We see those veteran and military students, because while they have a lot of life concerns in terms of what they do, and they have families, they have jobs, they get deployed, and all of those things, we actually see their performance in the classroom by every appreciable measure: course completion, persistence, retention, even graduation, although sometimes it takes them a little longer to graduate, particularly for people in the military. We see them being successful in the classroom. And I think a lot of that gets to what you see from the panel here and what we heard from the storytellers. There is so much that a veteran or the spouse of a veteran bring to the table in terms of their ability to succeed in whatever they choose, and that includes higher education.
Add to that?
Yes.
We had a meeting with the University of Maryland, Baltimore County president, and I asked, it was with student veterans, and we sort of asked the question, well, how are we doing? How are our veterans doing here on campus? And she echoed a lot of the same sentiments. They are more focused, they're more mature when they arrive, they're more focused when they're here, largely because so many of the challenges of getting an education are being taken care of. And one of the features that I didn't give much thought to, because I don't work in higher education, but she said they're also ready for jobs when they graduate. And that ability to go and get a job more quickly within that kind of first 6 months of graduation is actually really important for the success of the university, to be able to showcase that their students are ready to go. And so I think it shows that this benefit is paying dividends in ways that we don't really fully appreciate, but it is making our veteran population more attractive to colleges and universities.
Absolutely, that's a great indicator of success for an institute of higher learning is the career outcomes, right? Again, back to outcomes. And Jared Lyon, president of Student Veterans of America there, has great data on, again, the persistence and the completion rates of student veterans and how they really are higher and very, very impressive rates. So again, thank you for that. So we are getting down to 4 minutes there. I got the 4-minute mark, and this is a tight timeline, so they will give us the hook. But I want to throw this last question out to all of you. Really, so we've heard, again, incredible stories of impact for just how it has made a difference in generational wealth and provided hope and first generation completion of college degrees and higher level degrees and, again, earning potential. But from your experience, why would you say that the GI Bill really is one of the most influential programs in the VA's history? And anybody can start.
Well, I'll go because the Navy's leading.
I knew that was going to come.
Actually, I'll go.
I would say it's one of the most influential because it allows our veterans to redefine and reimagine the course and the path of life that they're going to take. It's going to open up doors that they haven't considered, and I know that even for myself. At 52 years old and going back to school and trying to know what APA Edition 7 is, and when you're writing a paper, I have learned a lot just in the last 18 months about how to write, how to think more critically, and how to be more introspective, which has made me a better leader.
And that is a great point. If there's something that we know in the workforce right now is that it's not even reskilling or upskilling, it's constant skilling that's necessary to stay relevant in the workforce.
And I think in regards to that reskilling, upskilling, constant skilling, whatever, I think it's the adaptability of this population, that Secretary Woods talked about. It's the ability of a veteran to be able to use the benefit to reshape themselves however they need to reshape themselves, to not just achieve their own dreams, but to contribute in whatever way they can to help move society forward.
I think to me, I completely agree with the statements before, but I think those of us who work in the veteran space know that the transition from service member to veteran can often be a perilous one. And I really view the GI Bill as one of the most important components that could help to smooth that transition. My number one piece of advice to a young person leaving the military is to consider going back and getting an education. Not necessarily college if that's not the path for them. It could be vocational rehab kind of resources as well. But employers have an easier time understanding what to do with a graduating student more often than not than they understand what to do with a transitioning service member. And so by allowing them to spend time in an education setting and then enter the job force the workforce from there, I think helps to smooth that transition. And so I think the GI Bill has played such a fundamental role in that specific component of a service member's life that I think it is hard to measure the positive impact.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree with everyone. But I think that when we boil everything down to a simple component of a veteran versus a service member, it's one thing, trust. And I think that with the GI Bill, it reestablishes trust. There's so many service members who signed up, again, I'll go back to it, they signed up because the incentive was we'll pay for school. And the actuality of that is very small. So by the time a service member is transitioning out, it's very hard and very difficult to get him to believe in the VA system. But when you have the GI Bill, when you have all the benefits that it covers and a veteran is able to tap into, it definitely starts to reestablish a trust factor Because now we're not just talking about the GI Bill. Now we're talking about getting veterans to talk about PTSD. Now we're talking about something that is not as popular, but MST. And now veterans are talking more, and they're coming forward more, and they're getting the healing that they deserve, especially from our country. So when you look at it from a standpoint of reestablishing trust, the GI Bill is the very start of that, because it is something that is actual, something that is guaranteed, something that is tangible, and something that is proven. It's got 80 years worth of being proven. So I will say that too, and that's why I believe it's important to drill that point in during the transition period, because you won't get a veteran unless he served. So in the transition period, we can really highlight the GI Bill and say, hey, this is something that has been established to take care of you, and that's different.
No, absolutely, absolutely. So let's make sure that we continue to tell these stories, again, that we continue to open these spaces to share the voices and the stories, so we can educate further on this. And again, we know that the VA has been working tirelessly to improve trust and quality of service, and that is showing in the data. So again, I just want to thank you all for being here, not just sharing your experiences, but your insights and thoughts on what we can all do as a community to, again, continue to improve access and improve the benefits that are offered to our veterans and their family members. And thank you all for being here. So.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Mona Dexter, Michael Trotter Jr., Keith Hawk, Kimberly Mitchell, and Anthony Woods. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much for that awesome panel. It is with great pleasure that I welcome Mr. Jared Lyon. Mr. Lyon was appointed as the National President and CEO of Student Veterans of America in 2016. He leads the organization's efforts to empower student veterans through the power of higher education. Under his leadership, SVA has grown to a network of more than 1,600 chapters on campuses in all 50 states. Mr. Jared Lyon.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to extend a massive, heartfelt thank you to all of our veterans, service members, their families, caregivers, and survivors, as well as all the dedicated individuals that make their journeys through higher education possible. SVA is 16 years old as an organization, and we wouldn't exist without the American Legion. We were founded when the American Legion was 89 years young. And the American Legion laid the path not just with the original GI Bill, the Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944. They gave SVA our first office space. And then later we'd move in with Wounded Warrior Project until we moved into our own space at 1012 14th Street in downtown Washington, D.C. And it would be 9 years after SVA's founding that the American Legion, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, Paralyzed Veterans of America, Disabled American Veterans, AMVETS, and so many others came together to help pass a new landmark piece of legislation in 2017, the Forever GI Bill. So as we gather here today to honor the 80th anniversary of the Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944, we reflect on the profound impact of this transformative piece of legislation and what it's meant to our nation. The GI Bill began the process of democratizing higher education for a post-war nation, opening up the doors for opportunity that had been previously closed to so many. While it's important to recognize that this piece of legislation was a product of its time, and it did not equally benefit all veterans, particularly African American veterans, women, people with disabilities, and other marginalized communities due to discriminatory state-level administration. But it nevertheless laid the groundwork for future progress. The GI Bill laid the foundation for the National Defense Education Act of 1958, the Higher Education Act of 1965, and it set a precedent that has inspired subsequent generations to strive for greater inclusivity and equity in education, ensuring that the opportunities that it provides continue to expand and evolve. The GI Bill is more than a simple earned benefit. It's a gateway to opportunity, providing veterans and their families with access to education, housing, and as we've heard, advanced career potential. This transformative support allows those who have served our country to achieve their dreams and build better futures. Since the American Revolution, education has always been a powerful catalyst for change in our country, preparing and equipping individuals in our nation to solve the complex problems that will face their generation. With the GI Bill, veterans can pursue higher education. They can learn new skills. They can enter diverse fields such as business, science, technology, engineering, and math, and health-related fields. Mind you, the top 3 undergraduate majors for veterans right now in our post-9/11 generation. And it helps contribute to the growth and innovation of our communities and our economy. My parents did not graduate college, nor did their parents before them. For me, as a veteran of the world's finest Navy and a first-generation college graduate myself, the GI Bill is not just a policy or a piece of legislation for me, it's personal. After my time in the US military, I used the GI Bill to further my education with an Associates of Arts at Brevard Community College, now Eastern Florida State College. And then I got a Bachelor's of Social Science at small state school in Florida, Florida State University, go Noles. And then I went on to get a master's in public administration from Syracuse University, and it was because of the GI Bill that I'm now a third-year PhD student at Syracuse. A father of 2, and thanks to my lovely wife, Shayla, I'm still a student veteran. The GI Bill is a legacy that runs deep in my family. My grandfather used it to get training after his service in World War II to become an ambulance crew member in his hometown of New Jersey after he was done serving in Europe. My wife's grandfather used it to become an electrician after serving in the US Navy in the Pacific during World War II. And my father-in-law used the GI Bill for training in the early days of computer coding after his service in the Marine Corps in Vietnam. These personal stories are a testament to the transformative power of the GI Bill and the opportunities that it provides, not just to veterans, but to their families as well. By investing in the education and well-being of our veterans and their families, we are strengthening the very fabric of our nation. Their success is our success. And as I've learned in the decade that I've served at the helm of Student Veterans of America, their potential knows no bounds. So I ask us to envision a future where every service member and their family can fully leverage the opportunities that are provided by the GI Bill, leading to a stronger, more resilient, and prosperous America. I encourage each of you to continue supporting and advocating for these opportunities as we look for ways to work together, to learn from one another, and to ensure the promise of the GI Bill is realized for all that have served and sacrificed. And in so doing, recognizing how the opportunity for higher education can be possible for all Americans. It is now my personal pleasure to introduce the Honorable Joshua Jacobs, Department of Veterans Affairs Undersecretary for Benefits. Before being nominated by the President of the United States to serve as Undersecretary for Benefits, he served as VA Secretary's Senior Advisor for Policy at the Department of Veterans Affairs in 2 other positions and spent nearly a decade working in the United States Senate. Undersecretary Jacobs believes passionately that it is essential that veterans, their families, caregivers, and survivors are provided access to benefits quickly, accurately, equitably, and with a world-class customer experience. Please join me in welcoming the 8th Undersecretary for Benefits, Joshua Jacobs.
Good afternoon, everyone. Jared, thank you very much for that introduction and for all that you and the entire Student Veterans of America team do for the student veterans in this country. Thank you all for joining us here, both in person as well as those who are joining us virtually. I want to extend a special thank you to the National Press Club for opening their doors to us for this event, and for the entire team who helped plan for and execute today's event. Your hard work ensured that this event reflects the voices of those who have served this country as we celebrate this momentous anniversary. I also want to acknowledge some of the special guests who joined us today. Congressman Jim Baird from Indiana. We had VA Chief of Staff Kimberly Jackson. The leaders who are responsible for implementing these great programs, John Bell, who runs our Loan Guarantee Program, Joe Garcia, who runs our Education Service Program, and Nick Pamprin, who runs the VRNE program. I also want to thank our panelists, Michael Trotter, Keith Hawk, Kimberly Mitchell, and Secretary Woods. I want to thank our moderator, Mona Dexter, as well as our veteran storytellers, which include Dustin, Tamara, Ann, and Rhonda. And I want to thank all of the VSOs, our county and state partners, veterans, family members, caregivers, and survivors who've joined us today. As we celebrate the 80th anniversary of what has largely been viewed as one of the most significant pieces of legislation ever created by the federal government, I am struck by the impact of this historic law. Before World War II, college and home ownership were, for the most part, unobtainable dreams for most Americans. But thanks to the GI Bill, millions of veterans were able to pursue higher education and purchase a home. The historic law that we're celebrating today served as an engine of social change that propelled many in this generation to attain a level of affluence that their parents could never have dreamed of. But it almost never happened because some at the time thought the law would disincentivize unemployed veterans to work, or that it might create problems by sending battle-hardened veterans to universities that were, at the time, largely attended by the rich. Fortunately, leaders at the time recognized that this country needed to avoid the mistakes that it had made following World War I, when the US provided veterans little more than a $60 allowance and a train ticket home. To me, this history is a reminder. It's a reminder that we don't always get things right in this country. But more often than not, we try to learn from our mistakes and we try to do better. And we are made better when one generation of veterans advocates for the next. We saw that with the passage of the GI Bill of Rights. We saw it when Vietnam veterans helped pass the post-9/11 GI Bill and the PACT Act. And I'm confident that we're going to see this generation of veterans who served in the Iraq and Afghanistan conflicts advocate for their peers and future generations of veterans. And as Kimberly highlighted earlier, thanks to the advocacy of VA, VSOs, and so many others, the GI Bill has continually evolved. It's evolved to expand to include more veterans and their beneficiaries, to provide greater flexibility and support as they pursue their educational goals. And for the very first time, it's expanding to help us utilize new GI Bill outcomes research to enhance our ability to better support the educational needs of more student veterans. We're also remaining vigilant against predatory institutions that deplete veterans' earned benefits without providing a quality education or a pathway to employment. And our home loan program is continuing to expand, offering grants to help when disabilities require modification of veterans' homes, and new options to help veterans and their families stay in their home when they're experiencing severe financial hardship. And contrary to what some people may think, the VA home loan can be utilized multiple times throughout a veteran's and survivor's lifetime. Each of these programs help veterans thrive after their service to this country ends in uniform. And thriving means more than just getting by. It's about helping veterans and their families reach new heights, have the opportunities to achieve their dreams, and making a lasting impact on their community and beyond. And as we join together to celebrate the benefits and the opportunities that have been achieved through the GI Bill and through the home loan program, this country must also acknowledge a painful truth. And it's a truth that Jared just referenced. That while the GI Bill opened countless doors for millions, it also mirrored the racial inequities of its time. As an example, many African American veterans and other marginalized veterans were systematically denied the benefits that could have laid the foundation for prosperity. We can't undo the injustices of the past, but we have an opportunity to create more effective solutions to ensure equitable benefits delivery moving forward. Our newly established Office of Equity Assurance, led by the indefatigable Cheryl Rawls, is working to identify any disparities that exist, understand their root causes, and to eliminate them. We believe that every veteran has earned the support and the opportunities to thrive, regardless of what they look like, who they love, where they live, or how they identify. And we will not quit until every veteran receives the support that they need to thrive and has access to the benefits that they've rightly earned. Now, most of the inspiring stories that we heard today are veterans who have or will benefit from the GI Bill. But I think it's important to note that nearly 40% of GI Bill beneficiaries today are used by family members or survivors like Ashlyn Haycock-Lohman. Ashlyn is the daughter of 2 veterans who used the Frye Scholarship and Chapter 35 benefits to obtain her bachelor's degree and go on to become a national advocate for other survivors. In fact, she has 2 interns with her today, Chloe and Madison, who are also using their Frye Scholarship to obtain their degrees. Survivors also have access to the VA Home Loan Guarantee. And I want to tell a story about one of the survivors who actually was the 20 millionth home loan that we guaranteed. It's a story of a survivor named Beth Carpenter, whose husband, West Point graduate and Iraq War veteran Captain Matt Carpenter, when he was preparing for another deployment, noticed an odd itching, which sent him to go seek health care. Unfortunately, he died shortly after from an aggressive form of liver cancer at just 29 years old, leaving behind Beth and their 17-month-old son, Joey. Beth wanted Joey to have a nurturing environment to grow up in, surrounded by family and in a place where he could create memories. And through the VA home loan, Beth secured a beautiful home at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, perfect for Joey to safely ride his tricycle and play. Beth viewed this home not just as a place to live, but as a foundation to rebuild and continue their lives. The ability to purchase a home became, for what, in Beth's words, were a family step, a first step for the Carpenter family that pushed them forward and helping them to continue to live their lives and honor Matt the way that he would want them to. Our efforts at VA are more than just financial compensation. They foster recovery, resilience, opportunity, and as we heard so powerfully today, hope. And they help ensure that every veteran, every family member, like Joey, Beth, Ashlyn, Madison, and Chloe, not only recover from loss, but can thrive. So as we reflect on the evolution of the GI Bill of Rights and the stability and success it has helped to facilitate, I am motivated to continue to do more and to do better. And while we pause today to celebrate, we're equally focused on the opportunities and the challenges ahead, and we're continuously looking for ways to improve our programs so that every veteran and survivor receives the support they deserve in a manner that honors their service. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon to celebrate 80 incredible years of opportunity, success, and outcomes that have been achieved thanks to tireless advocacy of those who came before us and those that I'm confident will continue well after we're gone. And with that, let me turn it back to you, Pam. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobs. Appreciate that. I count it all joy to work beside you every day, Mr. Jacobs, so thank you so much for that. So I hope today has been as encouraging and as motivating for you as it was for me. I have been a VA employee for over 30 years, and today has inspired me to do 30 more. So please allow me to again thank all the leaders, partners, and distinguished guests, both here in the room and joining us virtually, and a special expression of gratitude to all veterans. You are America's heroes. You are my heroes. So thank you so much. All of this is possible because of you. A huge thank you to the amazing staff of the VBA's Office of Communication and to Undersecretary Jacobs for this seamless coordination of this event and allowing me to be here to be your MC for the day. This has just been truly an honor, and I'm just thankful to be here. Please don't go home so fast or back to your offices or wherever you're going next. We do have a reception and some light fare for you in the First Amendment room, which is right out here to the right. So we'll join you there. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Today has been awesome. Thank you.